Hi guys, and welcome to guys. We were just joking that that's the worst way to start off any video. Damn it. All right.
So,
hey everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Welcome to the Robust Human Summit. Today's the last day, and I wanted to thank you all for hanging in there with us. We were supposed to put this out yesterday, but something came up, and I just felt like it would be better to not rush it and make it good. So today, Jeff and I are going to talk a little bit about just sort of everything that we had discussed throughout the summit. And our idea for the summit really came about on our drive from Phoenix to Canada, where we're at right now. And
right when COVID was kind of in its prime, and there was a lot of, we'll call it panic going on.
Yeah, everybody tunes into different things that are happening. Some people, when the COVID thing happened, they were feeling really good about it. Some people were really freaking out about it. We in particular were picking up on a lot of the fear things coming from, going to the grocery store, how chaotic that was in the parking lot, and just all these little stories. So we were really tuning into the idea that
people spraying hand sanitizer in your face.
Yeah. People and their kind of like a lack of knowledge around how to survive in a situation where death might be an occurrence, something that they weren't expecting could happen to them.
How to calm their fear mindset and not allow it to make the decisions instead of them making the decisions.
Right. And the toilet paper, the toilet paper thing was just like a great example of an inadequacy around what to do when you feel like maybe systems aren't going to be available for you in the way that you thought they would.
A definite sign that you are not ready for something, i.e. a disaster, a big change amongst your, in your worldview and your reality.
Right. And so it got us talking about how can we as a team, as the SFE tribe, help other people move beyond this fear mindset so we can be more productive with the current context. And right now it seems like the whole environment is a little bit more calm, but I don't want to forget about how everybody reacted. And that's why we created the Robust Human Summit, was to bring together some of the cadre members on our team who specialize in certain aspects of survival or just have certain passions about them. And then other experts like Dr. Mike T. Nelson, who's not on our team yet. We're going to try to make that happen. And yeah, just talking about how people can survive and thrive in different actually layers of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, we use that as a rough template so that people can see, okay, my base needs for survival, because that's usually what people think of when they think of survival: food, water, air, and so forth. Obviously, with COVID, what people started to notice was, without other individuals, without collective, group, tribe, society as a whole, the whole thing's a house of cards ready to come down. And most of Maslow's hierarchy is around yourself fitting into the greater of society in a healthy way. So lots of the Robust Human Summit covered that: communion, how to proper conversation with others, with your children, with yourself. It's those narratives that'll really help us in the long term. Mm-hmm. And among a few other things we want to identify, when it happens, when the bang happens, whatever it is, natural disaster, COVID, et cetera, I apologize. Whatever it is, being prepared beforehand with some simple principles is all it takes to improve your attitude during that shakeup of your reality, of your worldview.
And it's so important to have a more calm demeanor when things like that happen, not just for the sake of being able to physically survive it, but you can see how it caught on, like this fear mindset was really contagious.
The groupthink spread like fire. And what happens is, when you're thinking in your fear mindset, it's usually the lower subsets of your mind and not your higher functions. That we need both, and they're both great. Thing is when you think in one, in the fear mindset, you're going to push people away. You may have a tight little group of your survivalism crew. However, you're going to most likely isolate. I mean, how many cases of adult shaming do we see during COVID? It was unbelievable. people shaming, and it's like, okay, nobody's working with any of the real facts here. Just let's calm down, work together here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to close up the loop on this summit, what I wanted to do was interview Jeff here, who has his own thoughts on some of the more like a survival methodology. And I interviewed him basically for like 2 days on our drive up north. And I just thought it was great information. Some of the information you've heard already from some of the cadre members, especially in the beginning portion of that day 1 through 7, I believe. But Jeff has a specific background, and I just thought it would be interesting to hear it from him, his different mindset on things like that. And part of our methodology at the SFE is that none of us is as smart as all of us. So while we all do have one common through line, which is we all believe in the science and the spirit of post-traumatic growth, meaning you need to stress your body and stress your mind intentionally and sometimes non-intentionally, but just to go through it with consciousness so that you can come out of it on the other side a more robust person. But besides that, we have very, very different backgrounds and belief systems. And so, especially if you listen to Luke's last video on critical thinking and culture as a narrative, you might pick up on our other belief that we are not here to tell you how to do anything. We're just here to share information that's worked for us. And you can, take it or leave it and just look at everything very critically with your own mindset, because that's something that's important to us as well.
Yeah, we're not here to prune your garden. We're here to help you learn how to do that, what's best for you. And it's a two-way discussion when you're climbing those rungs to self-transcendence, which is another through line between all of us in the cadre. It is something we do believe in, that you should strive for that. It doesn't mean it's every moment of your life and it's not where you put all your energy, but the more we move towards self-transcendence as a collective, the healthier our narrative will be.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So before we get into some of the survival stuff and the thriving stuff, I also wanted to bring up that today is one of the last days to sign up for the trials. And the trials, another reason why we put the Robust Human Summit together is because if you know Maslow's hierarchy, I wish we had drawn it out here, but it's a triangle. And on the bottom layer, it has your physical or your physiological needs. And those really need to be put in place well, have a good grasp on how you're consuming fuel, how you're sleeping, how you're getting enough sunlight, all those things that you already know about if you went through the summit. And then moving on to tribe building. And all those layers need to have a solid foundation before you can move into self-transcendence, which is where the trials program lives. Sorry, we have our dog wandering around, knocking stuff over.
Guard puppy.
And so this is a great primer course before you get into our professionally put together course on self-transcendence for both your body and mind. So if you guys are interested in really diving into how you can be the best version of yourself, and that covers physical mastery as well as mental mastery. So if you're struggling with making a big life change, or maybe you're going through a big life change, that's like the perfect time to rejig everything in your life. And it's like, just as a team, we we choose not to do a lot of marketing for our products because we know that the right people who are paying attention will pay attention. So this is one of our only kind of calls to action, is that if you want to join, we only open it a couple times a year.
Yeah. And this is really the perfect time, especially if COVID has caught you off guard in any kind of way. For most people, it's probably highlighted a little bit of like, okay, I'm not prepared to survive. I'm not prepared to thrive. I don't really have a plan for my family. I don't really know what my value sets are. For those who do, they should realize that, okay, pre and post COVID, even if the whole thing collapses, my values don't change. When all these things are in place, fear does not do the talking for you. And just wanted to pile on something about the trials. It is a curriculum designed for you to root out the best version of you. I can't tell you what it is. Jess can't tell you what it is. We can discuss it, mutual exploration. But that's really the beauty of the trials.
And so at the end of this, you can be your own personal trainer because you have a good scientific understanding of your body and what you want to train and your the places where you're deficient. And those same principles are applied to your mind as well. Where are you deficient in your mental game? And especially as now the countries are starting to open back up a little bit, how do you want your life to be different? Those are all the things that you go through so that you can intentionally design your life moving forward. And it is not a comfortable process by any means. We still do use the methodology of post-traumatic growth throughout this. So it's not, if you're looking for an ooey gooey kind of
spiritual bypass.
yeah, that's not this. All right, let's get into the other stuff. Okay, so I wanted to start, gosh, where should we start on survival? I remember how this conversation first went when we were sitting in the car, and I was like, okay, how do you survive? And it's just such a big question packaged into such a few words.
It's a lifetime of exploration, right? Geography, environment, climate, social climate. How many people are around you? Are you by yourself? Are you with other people? What tools do you have? It's literally to try and have skills and drills for every outcome. Then you end up being, and I hope I don't offend anyone, a crazy prepper who spends all their time trying to prep for, something that may or may not ever come.
And that's okay if that's your hobby. It's just,
I practice survivalism to a certain extent.
mm-hmm.
I just look at it more in the lines of principles and certain skills, of course.
When we get into, just to touch on the prepper thing a little bit, if you think that you want to survive the rest of your life by yourself or with your family in a bunker, the question has to come about, like, what's the point?
Yeah, what's the long-term goal here? So obviously you have an extreme fear of death. Okay, most of us have a fear of death, and it's healthy to have a certain respect for death. However, what's the big plan? What's your overall plan? To one day die in that bunker alone? Anyways, that's why the collective issue really
couple
came
months quarantined, right? And I'm like, what's the point?
That's not true. We started homesteading.
I know it is fun, but at some point, I mean, come on, we got to be honest. Like sometimes, like, oh my God, what is the point? If let's just say hypothetically,
Trapped
we're
like
required to stay in our homes for an indefinite amount of time. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today.
Yes.
Okay, so you touched on attitude a little bit. Do you want to talk about how attitude, when we look at our physiological needs, attitude isn't on the bottom, but how does that help us survive?
So if we're using a Maslow's context with the pyramid, we all understand that the physiological needs are on the bottom. Food, water, air, thermodynamic regulations, sleep, sunlight, and digestion. And to some variants, there's different ones. The idea is that you understand the things that you can control and your body needs to survive. I need to put food in my mouth or eventually I will die. There's been studies, someone lived a whole year without eating food. So that time frame can vary, but we all understand that we need to put food into our mouths. The thing with attitude is understanding that, even the average human has 3 weeks without food. They can go 3 weeks without food and still survive. So all of a sudden, because hunger is always, that hunger cycle is just running, feed, satiate, feed again, like a honey badger.
Right. You fast for one day if you're not used to fasting, and you realize how obsessed we can get about food.
Yeah.
We're like cows.
So the point is okay, now you're starting to panic a little because survival situation has happened. You're like, oh, what about food? And then if you have the right attitude and a bit of knowledge, I have 3 weeks for food. Okay, what do I gotta worry about? Just grab your pen.
Right.
What's more important? My attitude will dictate my outcomes. What's important? Okay, I don't need to look at food as an emergency just yet. Now I have time to scavenge. Okay, well, positive attitude usually leads to positive outcomes. Part of the attitude is pre, during, and post concepts. So you've heard the term left of bang and right of bang by now. Bang is the incident. Left is before, right is afterwards. You can control certain degrees, intentions behind each of those stages. Pre, left of bang. We can talk to our family in a calm way. We don't want to induce fear when we're running drills with our kids. We want them to have a sound mind as we're practicing earthquake exit strategies out of our house, for example. Mm-hmm. We want them to be calm. If we practice with fear and panic in our voices, they're going to have those fear and panics in their voices. So we're passing on that attitude to our kids. But the point of the attitude is we want to practice certain things, discuss certain things with our family. Okay, what if X happens? Well, my wife is at work, my kids are at school, and I work here. We usually have that bubble, that sphere that we live in. We should have a good plan for in there, but we may have a cottage that's 2 hours away. Okay, what's our plan if I'm at the cottage, wife and kids are here? Okay, I'm on a trip, or my wife is on a trip, my kids are on a trip. Now our sphere has expanded. What's my plan, my actions for all this? They don't have to be deep, big discussions. They're usually, we'll meet here, rally points, things of this nature. If this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. And then we'll assess our situation and we'll carry on from there. Left a bang. What else? What are the skills that I do want to pass on to my children? Properly handling firearms, how to make fire. Whatever your list is that you deem important, you should practice those before. It'll get you outside with your kids. It'll get the family talking. You'll have a good time. You'll be out in nature. Everyone loves being outside. Excuse me. During the bang, same thing. Calm, positive attitude. It doesn't mean your head has to be in the sand or in the clouds. When I speak about positive, it's just you're not dooming and glooming everything, because now you understand, oh, if I have certain needs met, I have this much time, which I will get into something on the time of our physiological needs in a bit. I can remain optimistic. It's not until hope is squashed that you have a real issue. As long as you have hope, and usually hope is reinforced by having a plan of action, having discussed your plan of action with your community and your tribe around you, especially your nuclear family. So some skills, some drills for that time frame. And the only reason I keep referring to skills and drills is because most people can't properly operate off the concept of principles, and I just don't have the time to get into how a principle fully works. But the idea is it's like an intention. It's a broad statement. If this happens, then it covers a bunch of different things. And because, again, environment, geography, climate is so broad, I'm not going to touch on that really. And then after, write a bang. Sit down with your family. Please, the world has been given a gift right now with COVID. No matter who you are, your life in some way has been challenged. You may have lost someone like us. Your life, you may have lost clients, your business like us. Your where you end up, where you are could be impacted. So just as American, I'm Canadian, we're having issues with the border and immigration and all that. Everyone in some form has had their reality challenged. Don't waste this opportunity to do a good after action. Sit down with yourself, sit down with your family, sit down with your friends, and do a good assessment. Mm-hmm. Who are the people I want to keep close to me? What is serving me? What's not serving me? Was I in a survival mindset, or was I thriving? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to add on to something pre-bang. And I feel like right now you can always consider yourself to be in a pre-bang, right? As long as you're not in it at the moment, there's always something coming that you can prepare for.
Yeah, not everything's got to be as big as a disaster. Whatever causes you to be out of your comfort zone is in that post-traumatic growth cycle.
Mm-hmm. So I just wrote down here as a note, practice often. There was a study that I was looking into, or I think we had heard about it, around hitting your kids. So something that we consider to be generally bad at the moment, so one of the issues is that kids are getting traumatized by getting hit by their parents. But in certain cultures, those same kids grow up to feel like it's not that big of a deal. Or in different cultures, kids grow up to feel like it's not that big of a deal. And what happens is it's the discussion around, like, I'm going to go grab the switch and whoop you constantly, that when it does happen and actually happens, then the kids aren't traumatized because they have practiced in their minds what's going to happen when. They're practicing it. They're going through that post-traumatic growth loop, training more or less for the moment where they're going to get the bang. And on the other side of it, they're kind of like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah, you're going to get the switch, and it's going to hurt, and here's the outcome. So pre, post, and during are all laid out. It's already mapped out for your neural pathways.
Mm-hmm. And then for the children in other cultures where hitting is like not something that's ever talked about, but one day mom goes a little nuts and is like, you know what, that's it. You ran across the street. I need to whoop your butt. You know, whoosh. Then the child is like traumatized, can't believe it. Same thing happens when, and that's not to say you should hit your kids. It's just, that's the magic of this pre-training is like, you can make anything okay on the other side. And with the lack of it, you can make anything not okay on the other side. Another example is children are getting a PTSD from doing drills at school, doing lockdown drills. So being from LA, we had lockdown drills every quarter. Just, it was the same thing as, you know, fire drills, as any kind of drill. You do it often and you talk about it. And another magic word there is talking about it, communicating why this is happening. Doing it once, practicing it once with a school of kids that has never even considered that a lockdown drill needs to happen from an active shooter. Naturally, they're going to be so traumatized by something that they've never considered before and have never discussed before. So, yeah, I would say practice often is a...
Can I just, one, we're not advocating that you hit your kids.
Let's just make that clear.
We're also not going to be the ones who demonize you if you choose that as a course of action to raise the best version of your children. So we'll just put that.
Right.
And, you know, just like in The Dark Knight, the Joker says, when everything goes according to the plan, and I'm paraphrasing, when everything goes according to the plan, nobody panics. But as soon as it doesn't go according to the plan, that's when people panic. So if you talk about the plans, the contingencies, the different things that can come, the different outcomes, the different paths and journeys that you can walk, and you have a few tools to walk them, they're a lot easier to do, a lot easier to navigate. Gives you something to talk about as a family. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah. Well, actually on that, my second note here is, why isn't it good to talk about the negatives all the time? So there's a difference between walking through potential situations, training for crisis management and all of that and getting everybody comfortable. But what is the difference between that and in every situation being like, oh, don't run across the street because you might get hit by a car. Don't go into the front because you might get swiped up and raped and all that stuff. Like, what is the difference between training versus pointing out the negative outcome all the time?
Yes. Would you want to touch on it a little?
No, I would like you for you to touch on it.
Okay. Well, thank you for throwing me under the bus. We'll use the example of rape. If you do this, you're going to be raped. Like that kind of if-then eventuality will lead to a mindset that definitely has fear ingrained in it. I'm not really sure how you want me to
okay,
go about this, because I yeah, please do. And
okay.
then I will add in my 2 cents.
So one of the first things that comes to mind for me is speaking in negations. So when you're focusing on something negative that's going to happen, it's like manifesting your own reality. You go where you're looking. So if you're going to the street and you're constantly thinking, I'm going to get hit by a car, or in a more reasonable sense, if you're talking to your child or even your husband, you say, don't cut yourself, like using a knife. Be careful, don't cut yourself. Your mind is just using, don't cut yourself, cut yourself, cut yourself. That's what you're thinking. And that's when dangerous things
well,
happen.
The driving example is you're driving along, you're in a skid, and there's a telephone pole, and you're like, don't hit the post, don't hit the post.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about the post. Worry about where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in the beginning portions, when you're doing some of this pre-bang, left of brain bang, left of bang practice, that's when you go through the negatives. But in real life scenarios, focus on what you do want to do. So when your child or your husband is using the knife in a weird way, what would you say? You would translate, don't cut yourself, to make sure you're holding that knife well, or have sure footing instead of don't fall. And so in that sense, when you really want them to, this is real life now, people, you want to focus on what to do, not what not to do. And that's why you might feel like certain people are very negative when they're talking about all the different negative potentials that can happen. It's because it does put you in a very like conflict-minded mindset, in a place where we're at a time where you really do need to have a good attitude to survive.
All right. So I think in fairness, I need to circle back here. I did mention that on the physiological needs, we would do a little chat about time. So you've gone through breathing, sleep, food, communications, videos, exercises, and discussions, I just want to lay out a simple rule. It's called the rule of threes. Everybody is different, so by no means is this a hard and fast. It's just an average, a mean for everyone to live by, to show you that if these are being met, you have nothing to worry about. So the rule of threes is most people have 3 minutes without air before they go unconscious and could get brain damage, or they could be revived. So 3 minutes for air, 3 hours for thermodynamic regulation, staying warm or staying cool, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. And sleep is about the same thing as food. If you don't sleep for 3 weeks, you're going to have some issues. If you don't sleep for a week, I mean, if you're really not sleeping, you're going to have some issues. And that's why it's important to kind of know these, not kind of, but know these as a general rule. Because, oh, I'm breathing. Oh, I have a small water source. It's not huge, but it's clean, and I have a water source. Okay. I have clothing to deal with the desert or the tundra, depending on where you are. And I have even some time to forage. Even if I don't have food at that moment, I still have 3 weeks. You're going to spend a lot of time either moving or sleeping, and you're going to weigh why you'd want to do either one. For that, the whole point is rule of threes. It shows you that you have some time. Okay, I have those. I don't have to worry about this, this, and this right now. I can move on to food. I can move on to making sure my kids are taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we do owe them one more, and that is water. I mentioned 3 days without water. Again, that's an average, and it depends on where you are. If you're in the desert or in the rainforest, a high humidity area, it's going to vary. It's going to vary depending on how hydrated your body is. With many other details in there. But anyways, it's the last of the physiological needs that we haven't covered. And this time what we're going to do is not present to you how to get water, how to filter water, how to do. We're going to give you a few questions and a few considerations for you to seek out those answers for your independent areas. So I mentioned a few things. Water, most abundant compound in our body. You know, depending on what studies, 70 to 90%, depending on your age, all that. I'm not going to pretend like I've ever blended up someone and soaked out their moisture to do a moisture content level.
Yeah, that would be a weird assumption for us to think that you've done that.
Yeah, I don't assume I've done that. But we'll all agree that we're 50% or more made up of water, making it the most abundant single molecule H2O on our body. Extremely important to our cellular functions. No one's got to tell you that water is important. So some thoughts when it comes to surviving and thriving. Due to geography, climate, environment, equipment you may or may not have, so on and so forth, you're going to make your own independent assessments. But the things I would ask you to consider. 1, in your areas that you live, your sphere, family sphere, etc., your tribes, what are your water sources that you do have? Your clean, potable water sources. Well, they don't have to be potable really, because we can make them potable, but your water sources, groundwater, lake water, river water, rain, condensation traps.
Yeah, there are springs everywhere.
Springs.
There's a website called, I think it's like findaspring.com, or if you Google something like that, you'll find that website, and it's a pretty extensive map, at least in the US. I'm not sure if it's in Canada here yet. But yeah, it'll show you your location and the closest springs to it.
And springs are great. They're loaded with minerals. So unlike filtered city water that only has a few highly abundant chemicals in it, well, I won't call them chemicals, but molecules of chlorine or fluoride and other things, which I'm not going to get entrenched on a view. However, it's not a balanced source of minerals, where if you drink a balanced source of mineral, like water with a balanced source, oh man, it's so nice.
It's kind of like the talk that I gave on sunlight, being when you have the full spectrum of what the sun gives us. It's there's so much science that goes into it, but it's such a simple solution. Go to a natural source of light versus the artificial kinds, because usually artificial anything is not giving you what your body is synced to need.
Mm-hmm. So after you've considered all the possible sources in your area, so obviously if you're in a desert, you're going to have less sources than you do where we are in Canada. Right now, we're literally 50 feet away from Lake Huron. It rains every now and then. You can dig down and get groundwater. There's lakes all over. So water is very seldom on our mind here. When we're down in
Phoenix, where our U.S. house is, it's all we can think of. Water. It's hot.
We don't really get too panicked over it. However, we do consider, okay, where's the groundwater? Where's the aquifers?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the water table at? So now you've considered all your water sources. You got to consider, how am I going to collect this? Am I going to use equipment? Am I going to use what I got around because I've left it to the last minute and all I have is jars and pails? Manual equipment versus electric equipment. You can see the pros and cons there. If my batteries die, my electronic filter is no more good. Iodine tablets, things of that nature to help you purify your water. I will say this, it's a little bit unfortunate that people have allowed their,
the hand sanitizer era.
The hand sanitizer era, because you can drink a lot of water. You can drink puddle water. You can drink most, not super still beaver pond water, but even that I've drank and I'm still here. I didn't
doing great.
Beaver fever. Yeah. I'm doing real good.
Look at me now.
Okay, so you're considering your equipment. You're going to need to consider your filtration of that water, distillation, osmosis, manual filters, mechanical filters, ones that are, they use charcoal, sand. I really like those ones. Charcoal, sand is a great combo because if you're surviving, for example, you probably have charcoal. Doesn't ideally activated charcoal, which is just charcoal made from high heat, usually with a bit of a gas added to help expand the surface area. What happens is there's so many pores in it that the water goes in and it collects all the goodies, the bacterias and the impurities that are in it, the other molecules.
So if you're in a survival situation, you're likely creating a fire, and so any wood just turns into charcoal. Is that
well, not any wood, ideally hardwoods. And if you burn your wood too long, it's just going to turn into powder, which there are other uses for that powder. You want the black stuff. And again, I'm not here to dictate to you. I just want you to look into these filtration systems. Your containers that you're going to use, I prefer using clear glass over any other container. I'm not a big fan of plastic to begin with. I just don't want my water put into plastic mixing with those hydrocarbons, so on and so forth. Plus with clear glass, you have the added benefit of the sunlight coming in and the UVs help kill more bacteria. So again, I'm not here to tell you what your filters are. It's just good to know, oh, okay, I have all these available sources, condensation collectors for in the desert to, capture the water from your urine if you need to recycle that. You don't want to be drinking piss out of a dead snake. Anyways.
No. Just out of curiosity though, if you were to build this filtration system, you have a pail, some sand, charcoal sand. That's essentially what a filtration system would look like, right? And some kind of
if you think of what the ground is made up of, dirt, sand, gravel, you can have that drip into another collector. That's one way we could do it. You could boil it first.
So can you pee into that and then have water come out? Is that?
Yeah, as long, okay. If your filtration system is this much sand and a little bit of charcoal, maybe not, but try it out. It works extremely well. No, what I'm saying is if you have a 5-gallon pail size thing, it will definitely.
Okay, so don't hit your kids, but do drink your pee if you have a long enough filtration system. Hot tips from Jeff and Jess.
Okay. The idea is just to get you thinking about what your tools are going to be to collect all your sources of water and how to filter them. The next thing to consider is how to prevent water loss. Through breathing, sweating, salivating, urinating, defecating, all your cellular, and I won't say all, most of your cells use water to thermoregulate and carry out their processes. So it's very intense molecule. We use it very intensely. So how do we prevent the loss of it? This could be anywhere from preventing blood loss to preventing sweat loss. So think of, if I'm in the desert, how do I move around? When should I move around to prevent this water loss? What about clothing, layering clothing? Bedouins move around with lots of clothing. It looks like they're cold, but they're doing it to keep the sun out. In the tundra, same thing. I may have tons of layers of clothing on, but anyone who's been in those temperatures and you're moving around, you're searching, you're rummaging, you're, I don't know, looking to get a seal or something, you start to sweat. So, okay, I just open up my parka a little bit to help prevent that sweat loss. We don't want to add to the problem of it. For those who like to talk, maybe talk a little less. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But do consider, how do I prevent that water loss? So available sources, how do I collect and filter it? And how do I prevent the loss of it? And I do want to mention something else when we're talking about preventing the loss of it. In many areas of the world, there's a vast amount of utility put towards moving water away from your house. Mm-hmm. It goes into the rain gutters go into the sewage moves it out and dumps it wherever, when it's like perfectly good water. Not every drop of rainwater is like perfectly filtered, but it's pretty clean. When it does its evaporation, cloud cycling, rain cycle, it comes down pretty clean. It's good to collect, and it's good if you have animals, whatever it is. The whole point is that's a source of preventing water loss. We have rain barrels here, even though we have a well that's never going to really run out, and one of the biggest freshwater sources in the world, we still collect our rain. Mm-hmm. Instead of trying to move it away, we use it for our gardens.
It's about expending energy. You're expending energy moving water away from your house just to have in a natural system, bring it back in through hoses and stuff like that. So why not reserve a little bit of energy by putting rain barrels closer to where you need to put them, like for our chickens, for example. Mm-hmm. Fresh rainwater. Yeah. I'd also like to mention, during training, a lot of people have water bottles with them and they're taking sips like every 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so. That can get you into the habit of, in situations where you're exerting energy, needing to drink water, or at least feeling the distress of needing water. So that would be something that I'd like to throw in there as another hot tip from Jeff and Jess.
Yeah, people
train without water,
which may sound a little counterintuitive. And if you are in a specific platform, I'll just use, Olympic powerlifter, for example, and you need to regiment this detailed. Okay, we get it. That's your art that you are crafting. Go ahead. What we're talking about is building resilient and robust humans. If I'm drinking water just so I pee clear all the time, just keeping it in there because for some reason, I got to drink 8 gallons a day or whatever it is. When the time comes and you may not be around water for a little bit, like Jess said, your body's gonna be like, where's my water? It's been going in my mouth for every 5 minutes for the last 2 years. You don't really need that. Mm-hmm. Honestly, you don't. You can train yourself to be hydrated and not need to drink water that much. Of course, listen to your body. Please stay hydrated. We're not saying don't drink water. It's amazing how much you don't have to drink.
Well, just like Dr. Nelson was saying in the sleep and food talk, you need to train yourself in those uncomfortable situations. So with sleep in a noisy area, sleep on the floor, sleep on some rocks, try sleeping in different situations so that if in a survival situation, you're not in your comfy bed with your earplugs and your eye mask on, you can still get that needed sleep so you're not in debt. And the same with food. He trains high-level athletes and high-level military personnel, and he has them fasting once, maybe even twice a week, and then having what he calls a Walmart day, where most of these people are eating really good, high-quality food at certain times of day. One day they have to go to Walmart and eat Twinkies and like Slim Jims and things that have an infinite shelf life, just to keep their bodies guessing.
So he practices flexibility, mm-hmm. metabolic flexibility in your hydration, flexibility in your sleep. Even though, you don't want to be in sleep depth, you don't want to be dehydrated all the time. You don't want to do these things all the time. What you want to do is you want to do them consciously on your own terms. So you flex and stress them. When we flex and stress them properly, when the time comes, survival, etc., you are already flexed and stressed and ready to take on that challenge. And it doesn't even have to be that dramatic. Most people are really good at sleeping in their own bed, and then they go to a hotel in a different environment and their body's aware that they're in a different environment and they can't sleep there. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. It's just about prepping your body to move through life with no C's.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of times survival happens when you're actually in a Walmart. So for Jeff and I, we have really good like lighting system at our house where if we are using artificial light, it's incandescent bulbs or red bulbs. And we usually wear, you know, like red light glasses and get a lot of sun, blah, 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 all of that. We go into an IKEA or a Walmart and we're like vampires and we're just like bad moods and stuff. That's not really thriving. You know, there's some situations where we do need to go into modern day, like New York and not look like these crazy people. So that's another part of
but we won't
the
get
biggest
into
part.
That.
Well, the biggest part, yeah. One of the biggest things that I guess is the through line of all of this is the flexibility, physical flexibility, physiological flexibility, metabolic flexibility, spiritual flexibility, psychological flexibility. Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Going to a family function and not regressing immediately is physiological flexibility, understanding that you don't need to be this perfect version of yourself when you go in there. You can go in there and be your 15-year-old self and everything's okay. It is what it is. You know, it's not forever.
Yeah. The idea is to identify, okay, where am I being stressed right now so that you can override that with your higher functions. I just want to recap quickly a couple things that I had mentioned. One, attitude. Really understand what that word means and how it can help control your situation. Attitude comes from many parts of your brain, but let's make it come from your prefrontal, your upper cerebral functions so that they're properly rooted. You've crafted those aspects of your attitude so that when the emotional attitude comes into play, it's not overriding everything. Left, bang, right, a bang, pre, during, post, whatever, however you want to call that cycle. We like to call it the post-traumatic growth cycle. Really master it. And everything you do, it comes into play. Whether it's giving a presentation at work, you should prep for it. Okay, I got a little bit of anxiety. I give the presentation and then I sit back and then I learn the lessons from it. And then the next time, it always gets easier, right? Rule of threes, 3 minutes for air, 3 hours for thermodynamic regulation, 3 days for water, 3 weeks for sleep and food. And if you have all those, you're just camping, you're not surviving. And if you have all those, you're thriving. Be very aware of the air you're putting into your body and how you're putting it in there. Be aware of your environment, shelter, because as you learned with thermodynamic regulation, yeah, it's my clothes. I like to wear all natural fabrics, but what's around me, my environment that creates my shelter, which leads to that thermodynamic regulation. My water, it's a no-brainer with water. With any of them, really be very aware of what you're putting in there because you're using it a lot. Your body needs it a lot. And yeah, mineral-rich water. Same with food and sleep.
Yeah. As you're doing more of this, you'll feel like this sense of rewilding yourself, getting out there more, tuning into some of the more natural aspects of what it means to be a human. And I think in just doing that, that makes us more robust, but it'll also have you tuning into your intuition a little bit more and better. So I would just to add on to what areas of your brain you need to tap into to make these more robust decisions, I would say that intuition, wherever that happens.
Yeah, I generalize when I speak about the areas and understanding that they all work together with the whole thing.
Sure. Well, intuition, I don't know where that comes from, but I do know that since practicing some of these methodologies, there are times where decisions will come up and it doesn't seem like it would make logical sense, but following that gut response, which I've come to understand better by putting better quality food, water, sleep, light, all of that, having better relationships, trusting in that gut instinct, that rewilding instinct has become probably one of my best skills to survive.
It gives your body, your best chance of answering all the dilemmas that life throws at you, all the questions that arise in your life. If all those things are well met, balanced, tried, true, and tested, other things get a little easier and it seems like you can tune into your body a little more.
Yeah.
Anything else, sweetie?
No, I got nothing. Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the Robust Human Summit, and let us know your thoughts on all of this stuff. You know, we just kind of threw it out there to all of our cadre and to our friends who are experts in these topics. And so I was really happy to see how much effort and love that they put into all of these things from their own homes while they're dealing with their own things. So if you care to spend the time, go ahead and hit them up on Instagram and send them a little thank you.
Yeah, and your thoughts as well. This is a conversation. It's not being dictated to anyone. No one holds monopoly on these knowledge, these expertise. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right. Bye, guys.